Let me know when I'm live. Joel. Aha, good afternoon, good afternoon. Welcome to We Are the Ones Wednesday on a Thursday. As soon as I get Joel to turn the music down, Jupiter, anybody turning the music down? I'm still hearing the music. We are the ones to make you dance, to make you dress up and prance. I'm still hearing the music, guys. I'm still hearing the music. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. I'm feeling good. Yes, I'm feeling wonderful. It's We Are the Ones Wednesday on a Thursday. And you know why we have to do We're the Ones Wednesday on a Thursday? Because we have special guests. And as many of you know, are aware, we had the important press conference yesterday at 5, which meant that first we had to suspend our guests temporarily. And then we had yet another challenge. And the challenge was that my internet went down. So that was a whole other thing. Oh dear. And so today, because we are all at home, we should be at home, yes, under lockdown. Today is the Top of Your Yard edition number 2. So it's We're the Ones Top of Your Yard edition number 2. And I have special guests with me today, Howard and Mitzi Allen. Afternoon, guys.
Hi.
It's so great to have you both. Mitzi, happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
To you. I can't sing anymore. If I sing anymore, I'm going to.
That's okay. That's okay.
Now, Howard and Mitzi, if you'd permit me, I just need 2 minutes of your very valuable time to do
okay.
Very I have to extend my sympathies to 2 of my fallen villagers. I don't know if Point is a village. I'm not sure if Point is a village, but I have to take the opportunity today on We're the Ones to bid farewell to my Baker's Corner crew. We have Jomo. Most people know him of the Carbon family, but we know him as Jomo. And we also have Pangala. Okay, Devon, I'll say it nicely. Both of my fellas, I was raised on the Jomo's hand, known him from very young, and Pangala and I raised up together. We all used to hang out at Baker's Corner on the block. I know for those of you, when you're going to buy bread and you drive down the road, the corner right there before you make the turn, you know, you see a group of people hanging out there. Yeah, those are my people, my extra peoples, and those guys used to like that. So I want to say my condolences on behalf of the Baker's Corner posse, on behalf of the entire Point and Villa community and the extended family. We want to extend our condolences to the family. Next week, I have to say this too, next week, very important, next week we'll be paying tribute to George Weeks and the foundation of HAMA. That's very important. I wanted to alert folks. But today, in our second Top of Your Yard edition, I have 2 of my, I'm realizing my list of favorite people beginning to get long. It's not normally very long. You know, but I have to say, 2 of my favorite people, Howard and Mitzi Allen. Now, Howard and Mitzi, welcome to We're the Ones.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Have you listened before? I have to do a listening check. But the reason why I ask is because you will know the format that I take when I interview very special people.
Oh, no, I don't know the format. I always join you in progress.
Same with me.
Okay. Yeah.
So here is how it goes when we're doing very special people.
Okay.
The first question always is, who are your people? So I don't know who's going to go first. Tell us, you know, you, both of you together now are one. But before you together as one, your roots.
Okay.
So I really want to know who are your people. That's
okay. Okay. How far back do we go? How we go first? Who are your people?
You're talking like my family?
Yeah,
Yeah,
who you know?
grandfather,
Your grandfather. Yeah.
Antigua, we can
Yeah.
pretend
Okay.
people, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So, so I'm Howard Allen, and the Allen obviously is from my father, who was originally from Montserrat. So
Okay.
I have Montserrat roots, and my mother was originally Dorset from English Harbor, Falmouth, that area. So if you know Bishop Dorset would be my uncle.
Oh, looking at the face now. Yeah, I see.
Yeah. And so people like William Dorset and Andrew Dorset, those are my cousins.
So the talent runs through the roots.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And in terms of siblings, the name that you'd probably be most familiar with is, I'm sure you've heard the nickname, the analyst.
Yes.
The analyst is one of my brothers.
Okay.
Yeah. He's actually the brother. It's 7 of us, and he's the brother just above me.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Okay.
Right.
And
So-
Mitzi?
And I grew up in Sutherlands.
Yeah.
I grew up in Sutherlands, so I'm quite familiar with St. Johnson's Village, Clare Hall. I went to grammar school. I also went to.
You went to the second best school, huh? Okay, carry on.
I also went to the Goodwill Academy, which was Point School.
Oh, see, you had to have some roots, though, baby.
I was going to say, if you say that, she'll claim you.
And my father did a lot of work for Brownie Bakery at one point.
Nice.
Yeah, he was actually a contractor at one point, building homes and stuff. And so when he was doing a lot of work out in the country, he would deliver bread to shops in the countryside. He just made that part of his
rounds.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So some of the people at Brownie still recognize me from those days.
I tell you about this very small, this is a very small space.
Very small, very small.
Mitzi, who are your people?
My people. My mother is Gloria Benjamin Nee Lloyd, the Lloyd family hailing from, I believe, Bishopgate Street, because George Ryan said that my grandmother were neighbors to his mom way back in the day. So they knew George Ryan when he first came over from Montserrat. And my father is Milton Benjamin, and he is a journalist, and he was the editor of the Antigua Star newspaper back in the day. So I am related to anybody who's related to the Benjamins or the Lloyds in Antigua is probably a relative, because I keep running, and the Davises as well. So my people are the Davises from Tanner Street, the Benjamins, and the Lloyds, who originally hailed from Bishopgate Street, but then my grandfather then was the gatekeeper out in English Harbor. And as Desmond Nicholson would tell me, they used to call him Lightning Lloyd because he took a long time to open the gate. He moved the gate really slowly. So I spent a lot of my early childhood before I moved to Canada in the dockyard itself before it was renovated. I had my childhood days I spent in the dockyard, and I went to the Antigua Girls High School when it was a prep school, when they still wore hats and all of that stuff. So before we migrated in the early 70s.
Yeah, and I forgot to add that my mother was a seamstress, and for a long time she had a shop on Cross Street, right across from where you had an office at one point.
Oh,
Eunice Bridal.
Yeah, right across the street. She had she did a lot of bridal work and stuff like that.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
world is getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah, and that's where I got my sewing skills from too.
Yeah.
You sew.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Makes an note of the
Note of
sewing.
sewing.
All right. So, Howard, you mentioned that you went to the Antigua Grammar School.
Yeah.
I want you to use that opportunity to share with us your recollections of growing up. I mean, we hear a lot about the legacy of Antigua Grammar School and so on, but from your perspective, what was it like, your time at grammar school?
Well, I enjoyed my time at the grammar school. One of the things I always remember is the fact that when I started going to grammar school, we were being taught Latin. And most of us hated it because we didn't see the point of learning a language that nobody spoke. And we made a big fuss about it. And I think eventually they stopped teaching it. But later in life, I actually got to appreciate it more because I'm really into language and words and the roots of words and stuff like that. And Latin is kind of the root word for a lot of the languages.
That is true.
French, Spanish, yeah, even German, right?
A curious question.
One of the things I remember is that we participated in a lot of sports. So we would do a lot of athletics. We would make our own. We do high jump. We'd make our own pole vault sticks and little sand pits, and everybody was into some kind of sports. And we would make a lot of stuff.
The environment.
You mean at grammar school? It wasn't mandatory, but I think most children at the time just had a kind of natural inclination towards sports. In fact, I got into trouble one time with the headmaster because he would come to a class every Friday. And one Friday he came and said that he was disappointed because he didn't see a lot of people at the sports practice. Not the sports practice, but the last sports meet we had. He didn't see enough people participating.
Okay.
And so I put up my hand and asked him, well, if everybody participated, who would be the spectators? And it didn't go down well.
It didn't go down well.
Yeah, that was Mr. Blackett. The infamous Mr. Blackett. Yeah.
And Mitzi, your school days before you migrated?
I remember most about Antigua Girls High School was all the classes that I enjoyed, which was music, and a teacher by the name of Mr. Nicholson, if I can remember. We did a lot of theater things. I participated in a lot of the theatrical productions there. We did The Sound of Music. We had performances up at University Center. And I remember, and I don't know if they still have it now, but every Christmas, we used to have these fetes. And then every Christmas, we also had something which was poorly named the poor children's party, where you had to bring a child from your village and give them a gift. And I don't know why that stuck with me. But I just remember my sister and I being separated for the first time into different classes. I had Miss Gota as a teacher, and Mrs. Gota, and but I just remember the art part of my experience at high school, participating in plays and dances. And there was an instructor that came from Venezuela and taught us African dance. And all the songs that I learned from Mr. Nicholson, some of it, some Jewish songs and so on, I still know to this day. And when I meet people and I'm singing them, they're asking me, where did you learn that? And I said, well, when I was in school and, around the age of 6 and 7. So I have fun memories. Even though it was a very short time at high school, I had fun memories being there.
Right. So sticking with Mitzi still, you migrated for about how long? You were away from us?
I left, went very young. Well, I left Antigua twice. Long story, but the last time I left Antigua, I was 12, and that was right after the earthquake. But the first time I left, I was 7. So it was a process in the migration. So at this point, since I've just had a birthday, it's fair to say I have lived half my life in both countries now. I spent 25, 26 years in, oh gosh, yeah, almost half. I spent 26 years in Canada and we've been married 28 years this summer. So it's almost an even split, I think. Yeah. So a lot of time. I mean, I came home as an adult. When I returned to Antigua, I was 28 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
During your time in Canada, you developed your core professional skills.
Right. Yes. Well, you can basically say I grew up there, and had to basically start. You know, when you migrate, they put you back a year. So I repeated some of the stuff that I'd already learned growing up here, I ended up being like the smartest kid in class only because I'd done it before. And I went to grade school, I went to high school, I went to college and started my internship and my career as a journalist in Canada.
Okay, excellent. And Howard, so you would have left grammar school, and what happened between?
I left grammar school and then I went, yeah.
Here's the timeline, sorry, I'm giving you. Between grammar school and meeting Mitzi, what happened?
Oh, I knew that was coming. Yeah, let's get down to it. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I left grammar school. I went to the Antigua State College, and then I started working at CTV, cable TV. That's where we met, actually.
So what did you do at CTV? Wait, what did you do at State College?
I did engineering.
I noticed I said engineering.
Yes.
Electrical engineer. Electrical engineering. Then I went to cable TV. That was in 1983. And I pretty much worked in every department at cable TV except at the counter collecting bills and checks and that kind of thing. But I pretty much worked in every department.
How old was CTV by the time you got there?
It was just starting. It was maybe just months.
So you got in early.
Yeah, he was actually running the cable lines to the different homes.
Yeah, the cables on the poles before there was a super channel. Before they were actually on. Mm-hmm. I was there running the lines on the poles and all of that, and then probably about less than a year after that, they set up after cable TV was actually on air, after the subscribers could actually watch it. They set up the local access channel called the Super Channel, Channel 2. Right. And so I started working for, I was like I did the programming for Channel 2 and also some editing and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Hold on. You studied electrical engineering at State College and then you went to CTV to work. So how did you get from electrical engineer to editor? Was it you learned on the job?
Well, before CTV, an uncle of mine had a camera that I used to play around with. So I understood a little bit about editing and plus, while I was at grammar school, I had a job at ZDK, working with a gentleman by the name of Al Jackson. So I was hanging around Al Jackson, Carl Jackson, C-Jags, Yoko D, Bobby Reese, Garland, Charles.
So in essence, you're getting fabulous on-the-job training.
Yes.
See, comes out right. All right. So So you
And I actually produced a children's program while I was at ZDK. Me and my younger brother and a gentleman by the name of Don Official.
Don Official. That name sounds familiar. Don Official. Don Official. Which Don Official?
He wasn't Don Official there.
Okay. All right. Okay, very cool. So basically, as a pre-runner to where you are today.
Yeah.
Going to grammar school, you got valuable experience, or should I say invaluable experience?
Invaluable. Because not only did I hang out at ZDK, they actually taught me a lot of stuff. The guys there really took the time to teach me what they were doing. So I really got to learn the tools of the trade and, how to splice tape and everything.
Okay, awesome. All right. So we know now. So by the time you got to CTV and CTV was ready for their super channel, you were basically the right man. You were the right man for the job.
Yeah, it was a perfect fit and almost at the right time.
Okay. So how many years after that did the lady next to you pop into CTV?
Well, they would be maybe about 9. Well, I started in 83. She came to Antigua in 91.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So then before we get to 91, let's leave her a little there. I'll come back to what she was doing in that time.
Yeah.
So you were responsible for for programming for Super Channel.
Yeah. Well, just for a little bit before the Super Channel, I worked in what they call the head end, which is
master control.
Like in the head end, you're watching all the channels that go out. So at that time, I think there were 12 channels. So there was a TV on the wall for every channel that went out. And that way, if there was ever a problem with a channel, you would know immediately.
Do they still do that now?
Oh, yeah. Well, they have to because, yeah. Yeah, but I think the difference now is instead of 100 individual TV screens, they'd have one or two big screens with little images that represent. But they have to do that so that they can know if a channel has gone out or what the quality of the transmission looks like. Right. So for a little while I did that, and then I moved on to sort of managing that channel, the Super Channel. So I would do the programming, deciding what programs will run at what time and that kind of thing, and actually doing up a program log. And then moving on from that to editing promos for the different shows and promos to promote the channel. Right. And that's where I started to really sharpen my editing skills. Because even then, when we started, we weren't using real production equipment. We were using a regular home VCR that had editing capability. It was a regular home VCR, but it had a feature where you can edit on it, which most VCRs don't. And it was around 1987 that the late Weber Jr., they invested in real professional broadcast equipment. Before that, they had invested in some secondhand equipment at one point, but it was in 87 that they really invested in top of the line real broadcast equipment.
Okay, all right, sounds interesting. So Mitzi, we just got a good overview of what Howard was doing for those in that period of time. What was happening in Canada? Mitzi, having completed, you went to university?
Yeah, so I studied broadcast journalism, and right out of school, I was fortunate enough to get an internship first with a multilingual, multicultural TV station where I worked for a little bit. And the highlight of working there was I covered hurricane. They sent me, because it was a multilingual station, I was the only one in the newsroom that had English as a first language. because we did a Chinese news class, we did an Indian news class, we did a Portuguese, Ukrainian. It was Channel 47, which is now called Omni. They they provided news and entertainment for the immigrant community. So that's where I got my internship. And right after I got my internship was done, they hired me. And the highlight of my time there was they sent me to Jamaica to cover Hurricane Gilbert. Nice. And I covered, that was a tremendous experience for me and then right after I did that, I got headhunted from that station by CT, and this is funny too, CTV, because remember I'm now coming to Antigua to work for another CTV, but I got headhunted by CTV Canada because one of the professors that worked there remembered me from school, and they saw me on Channel 47 covering Hurricane Gilbert, and somebody must have said, "Who's that girl?" And the gentleman said, "I know her. She's one of my students." They had me come in and they interviewed me. They auditioned me, and then the next thing I knew, I was working at a larger station, a bigger place with more high profile with actually just playing with the big boys, really, very quickly. It was very quick. I remember even on my first day at CTV Canada, somebody wanted to know all the places that I had worked before landing this job, and I only had one other television station under my belt, and they were like, "Oh, okay," But I had the distinction while I was there of being their first Black reporter on that CFDO affiliate in Toronto. And I worked there for a bit until I'd had enough, really. I came to Antigua on vacation, and I thought that I could do so much more here as a journalist.
Hold on. You had this posh end job, came home on vacation, and did what?
And decided that I'd love to listen. A lot of people have done it. I'm sure there are a lot of people listening to me who said, "Yeah, I've done that." I just decided I wanted to live and work somewhere else for a while, and so I went back and thought about it and decided I was going to come and live in Antigua.
You hadn't met Howard by then?
No. And
to make sure you wasn't part of the
no, absolutely not. No, I was just coming back. I wanted I wanted to do something different. Now I can tell you, saying all this when you look back in hindsight, as I was a competent reporter, but I think that I always envied all the people I saw going out to produce TV shows and so on. And I liked the idea of calling the shots and creating something from scratch.
So when you came home on vacation, did you actually explore anything, or you just thought that Antigua looked right for your next step?
I did explore. I went up to ABS. I went up to ABS, and I met Tanny Rose. And I told him who I was, and just like you at the top of the show, who are your people? Exactly. And we spoke, and I talked about ABS and what I was doing in Canada. But interestingly enough, I had 2 trips to Antigua before I actually made the move. And by the time I got back to Canada, my career was just zooming right along. I was getting a lot of high profile stories. I was covering race relations inquiries. I was covering Ben Johnson when he lost the race. I was covering Mandela. I was doing a lot of stuff, so that it wasn't like, all right, move. I went back and I worked, and after a while I thought, so I think I got a lot under my belt before I actually decided. But yes, I did explore what it would be like to live and work here while I was here.
So you went back to Canada and you decided, I'm ready to go home.
Yes.
So tell us about those first few months being back in Antigua? I'm now curious.
The first few months before I started working?
No, the first few months back in Antigua. When you decided
You actually moved back.
First of all, where did you end up working? I'm assuming you got a job right after you came home. Or you came back?
Yeah, I came back. I started working immediately at, well, not immediately, but I think I was unemployed and a tourist for about a month, catching up with family and friends and learning my way around. And then I started working at CTV, the Super Channel. I was hired by Bear Bird Jr. And
Mitzi, you said you spoke to ABS. I didn't hear anything about that. How did, okay, all right, go ahead.
To make a short story out of ABS, they didn't want me when I went there first.
You knew this before you came back or after you came back?
Knew it after because there was nothing solidified about the possibilities. I think I had a strong feeling because of the political climate in Antigua at the time that I wouldn't be working there. Put it that way. Okay. Well, I wouldn't be working there. One of the things that my father, pardon?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Your father's connection was which side of the divide?
Right. My father, apart from being a journalist and working with the Antigua Star and the Workers' Voice and very good friends with Tim Hector, he was also the communications officer for George Walter when the PLM came into power.
Okay, poof. So
yes. Okay. Okay. All right. So, boy, you're a real investigative journalist, aren't you? Yeah. So I went to I got a job at CTV as the news and production manager. My task was to produce a show and eventually create a newscast. But we first started with a television news program, and I was to work with Howard, and that's how we met. I was introduced to him by the then general manager at CTV, Mike Simon, and I met him on my first day there, and we had to end up working together on a show I produced for the Super Channel called Insight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Howard, when you met her first?
Yeah, and when she met me, I was wearing a pin, CTV pin from the channel that she worked for in Canada. But I had never been to Canada.
How did you end up with the pin?
Right. So I was doing in 1989 when Hurricane Hugo hit.
Mm-hmm.
CTV was down for a little bit because they had to, put a lot of the cable lines back up and that kind of thing. And so, a lot of the system was not on, and so there wasn't a lot for me to do at that time. And at the same time, an invitation came for someone to go to Barbados to the Caribbean Broadcasting Union. You remember CaribScope?
Yes, I remember CaribScope.
Right. So at the time they had something called CaribScope, and they also had something called CaribVision, which was like a regional news exchange. And what they were trying to do was improve the quality of the news they were getting from, especially the small islands, because their complaint was they were getting interesting stories, but technically the quality of the productions weren't good.
Okay.
And so what they did was they invited some of the technical people from different stations in the OECS to come to Barbados. And we did this. The other islands, those guys did a 2-week training course. I did a 6-week training course. So I stayed on an extra month. Okay. Right. Yeah. So we had these 2 German engineers who worked they work for Sony, and they were basically teaching us what the standards were for broadcasting, getting us to understand what the technical standards were, so that the footage we sent them would be of much better quality. Right. And so while I was there, one of the executives for the CBU was traveling. He was traveling somewhere, and I was talking to him, and he had this pin, and he said, "You work for CTV in Antigua, right?" He said, "You could use this." And he gave it to me, and he said, "It's for a station in Canada." But he's somebody that travels all over the world to conferences, broadcasting conferences and stuff all over.
So imagine my surprise when I see him with the pin for the station that I used to work for on his shirt.
Yeah.
So that became a conversation point, I suspected.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Yeah.
Now, before I get to both of you, Howard, a question for you. What plans did you have? Did you have any plans in mind for yourself in terms of a career path?
Yes. What I wanted eventually was to have my own production company.
Oh, you had that in mind from day one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And so I always had, Go ahead.
Where would you have gotten that idea from, though?
I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and because of my working with ZDK, because of my working, I did a little stuff at ABS too, with a lady by the name of Joan Samuel.
Oh, you got all the good ones, man. Come on.
Right. Mm-hmm. So because of that, I had a natural interest in broadcasting and production. And so I was always thinking about how I could, produce my own content, really. Yeah. So that was something that was always in the back of my head.
All right. So we're at the point now where you both would have met.
But at the time, that kind of setting up a business like that would be extremely expensive.
Oh, I'm coming back to that. Hold on. I just want to know. I have that right here. But I want to know, so the 28 years you say you guys were together? Have been together?
Yeah.
I heard it was some kind of whirlwind story, and it was like...
whirlwind romance?
Yes. Bring us up to speed.
Which part? What?
Yeah, so we met around July.
What?
We met around July.
We met
during Carnival of 91.
Yeah, we met in July of 91, and we got married July of 92. He proposed to me 3 months after we met in the editing suite at CTV. That's the quick version.
So that's the whirlwind you were talking about.
That's the whirlwind.
Yeah, I heard there was some whirlwind. Howard, what was it about her that made you want to propose in 3 months? I mean, what could you learn about a woman in 3 months? She hasn't lived here for how long? You don't know anything about what is it?
It's like they say, when you know, you know.
He's a risk taker.
He's a risk taker, but he paid dividends. Howard, tell me that you met. Can you remember?
About
the Mitzi that you met. Yeah.
You can remember?
Yeah. What I remember most about her, in the early days is she was very disciplined, always very organized.
The things that haven't changed. Go ahead.
And was always taking notes. No matter who she's having a conversation with, she'd have this little note.
Yeah.
And people would get totally intimidated.
I was always writing things down. Yeah.
And so you guys hit it off. Mitzi, what were your first impressions of Howard?
I thought he was a very young, shy, super talented guy. When I got to know what he was doing at the Super Channel all by himself, I was likening his skills to the people that I worked with in Toronto. And I used to work with the best. I worked with the best cameramen in the industry. I worked with the best technicians in the industry. And he was doing things at their level. And I'm not saying that to, flatter him. He was doing that. Yeah, it's my husband. And I was amazed at that. And I was like, giving him the side eye, like, how is this even possible? One of the things that he was also doing is he was fixing the pneumatic machines when they got broken, when they needed maintenance, So, yeah. The machines that you use to run the tapes to do editing and so on.
When we're running programs, we're not using, we did use VHS machines at one point, but in terms of broadcasting, you'd use what they call pneumatic machines with the big tapes, the big cassette, right? Well, so what happened is over time they would, get worn, and you'd have to replace the head.
Yeah, so he was doing so he was just basically
that's one of the things I learned in Barbuda.
Yeah, and also what he learned from State College, all that electrical engineering stuff and all of that. He was fixing the things that he was using, maintaining the things he was using, and I was very impressed with that. But he was very reserved. They say still waters run deep, so he was very quiet. Didn't speak much and very, very observant, which was really good because I'd be talking, and he would be the one doing all the observing, and can tell you more about a situation than I could because I was so busy talking. So my first impression of him was that it was just an extremely talented young man. And when I say young man, I mean young man because he looked so young. I had no idea that we were closer in age because at the time he just, and so it was really, he was a breath of fresh air when I met him.
Okay. One more question.
And humble. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So you came back, you met Howard. So clearly
right.
there was that added benefit to coming back. But in terms of your financial your compensation,
yeah,
and I'm not just going to look at your compensation. I'm going to marry it to the cost of living in Canada and how much you were being paid versus the cost of Antigua and how much you were being paid. How was that transitioning for you?
Oh, wow. That was a big drop in every single way. I think I learned to live differently. And some of the things that I thought I couldn't live without in Toronto, I definitely lived without here. I was fortunate enough that when I first returned home with my job, I got a car. So that was really good, the use of a company car. But it did take a lot of adjusting. I lived with family before I actually ventured out on my own. And my time at...
You had time to venture out on your own. You had Howard.
No, I didn't have him in that. Not until we got married. I was still very much an independent soul, even though it didn't last very long. I was on my own for a year. Yeah, I never even thought about it. Yeah, you're right. I was on my own for a year, and I will tell you this, the adjusting was easy because once we started to date, the things that I would find frustrating and would have probably had me running back to the airport to get off the island, he would put in perspective. So he made living here fun and easy. And I realized too that there are only certain things you really need to be happy in it, and it's really about finding fulfillment in what you do and making sure that what you do other people benefit from, even whether it's that they learn a new skill being around you or they're inspired to go off and do something of their own. And I loved that. And in no short time at all after I settled in, I inadvertently started to mentor other young women who aspired to do certain things. And I got involved in things in Antigua on a cultural level. We started, and I dragged Howard along with me I would get involved in Carnival, with I was working with the young ladies that went into the pageants and and all of that. So the adjustment in that short time was good.
Just a minute. So you got involved in Carnival working on pageants.
Mm-hmm.
What you drag Howard along? What Howard came along with you to do?
To videotape the girls in the practices so that we could, and he was very creative. He would look at their presentation and you know, he had fun, right? Oh, see. You know?
28 years, confession. Did you really have fun or you just wanted to be up on the Mitzi?
Probably both.
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
So when she first said, let's go, it's like, okay, she's going, so I'm going. And then eventually,
well, actually, even before Mitzi came back at CTV, we used to cover all the carnival shows. We were very involved in carnivals. So working with contestants and stuff like that is something that I had done before.
Yeah, it wasn't a stretch. It really wasn't a stretch.
A truly new experience.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, cool. So Mitzi, so one more question for you, Mitzi, before I move move again. What if you were to be, because the beautiful thing of, well, Point FM generally, it goes through the diaspora, but now more of our people in diaspora have a lot more time to tune into us. So,
okay.
If you were to be, especially young persons who would have studied abroad, Antigua studying abroad, and we know that in terms of the compensation, the financial compensation, it cannot equate to what they would make over there.
Yeah.
Right. If you were at this point, you're not going to do it towards the end, I'm going to capture it now from you. At this point, and you were to give persons 3 reasons to come back home that could potentially compete against the financial compensation of a first world developed, more developed country, what would those things be?
The quality of life. Yeah. Besides Howard, the quality of life. I like the quality of life here. I can show you pictures of what I looked like 28 years ago. I looked older than I do now, right? And the lifestyle. So the lifestyle is one thing. And I will also say that there is, if you are Antiguan born, there is a root connection that cannot be denied, and a community to support you as you pursue what you want to do. And I think no matter what you're doing, wherever you are just another cog in the wheel. Here you actually get to touch and change and see that the skill that you have learned, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever profession it is, see how it actually makes a difference in building a community. And you are a part of building. And for me, that was important. And just being able to see that what you do, no matter what it is, that it matters within a community, it's easier to realize that at home than it is abroad. You know, I will say this. I mean, when I left, right after I quit my job, somebody else was in my place the next day. You know, so that tells you how you are just a cog in the wheel. Here, what you have to contribute whether it's big or it's not, it can't always be about the money, you know, and the money will come. It's been said, find something that you love to do and try to find a way to make money doing it. The rest will fall into place.
All right, excellent. I like that. I like that. I think I'm going to cut that out for posterity so that we can always have that to circulate. All right, okay. So now let's get back now to Howard and Mitzi working at CTV, developing programming content for CTV. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's what we were doing.
Right. And how many years did that last?
Oh, geez, that is oh my goodness. Okay, well, for me.
Let me say this quickly. Before Mitzi came, we were kind of producing content, but what we did was we would really just go and cover events for the most part. So we go and we'll cover the carnival shows, we'll cover a school graduation, we'll cover some event, and then we'll edit it together nicely and then put it on the air. Right. Before Mitzi. After Mitzi came is when we were actually producing content, where a show was actually scripted and all of that, and formatted, and But
I was there. To your question about how long that lasted, Howard had been at CTV for 12 years or 13.
No. When you came, because you came in.
Oh, you mean how long it lasted with us together at CTV?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think that's really hard because I was at CTV, I left, and then I went back.
Yeah, we both left in 92.
Right.
We both left in 92 and then went back.
Right. And then the hurricane, then we were really out after the hurricane. So I worked at CTV for, you could say, for 2 years, on and off for 2 years. And Howard maybe 3 or 4 during my time, because he spent a total of, yes.
Okay. So you said that there was the before Mitzi and then the after Mitzi. What was the feedback from the public, from the viewing community in terms of the programs that you guys were putting on?
Yeah, well, the first program that we worked on together was a program called Insight, which is like a television news magazine type of thing.
Yeah.
And that was hugely successful. It had a kind of 60-minute sort of feel to it. And we did how many episodes of that?
Oh, geez, we did a lot.
Yeah, I can't remember. But we interviewed people like Butch Stewart, Brian Salter from the U.S. Embassy.
We did features on Betty's Hope.
Yeah.
The passport fraud with Brian Salter, how that was happening.
Yeah, so it covered a lot of stuff, and like I said, it had a kind of 60-minute.
I was very proud of that show because, as I mentioned before, what impressed me about Howard, if you look at that show, and I would say to him, if I show this program to my colleagues in Toronto and tell them that 2 people worked on this, they would not believe it, because that kind of programming, there'd be a whole crew, and we produce it, we shot it, we, format it, edited it, all of that, 2 people. And that it's just not done anywhere else, And so I'm still to this day, I'm proud of Insight, because it showed me what I was capable of. Because remember, when I left Toronto, I was working as a reporter. And all of a sudden there I was doing a whole show with just one other person. It was just great.
Then we did another program called News for Kids.
Kids. Yeah. With Patrice Martin. I picked up Patrice Martin when she was 6 years old, made her sit on top of the desk with a book, and she was reading stories and so on. So we did News for Kids.
Yeah, and then we started to do the Super Channel
newscast,
nightly newscast,
and the weekend newscast. Yeah. Yes. Right. So I produced that. Yeah.
So and that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, just. All of that kind of came to an end after Hurricane Lewis. Just like Hurricane Hugo, but even worse, had devastated CTV. And so again...
blew us out of work?
Yeah.
Literally.
So it was after that I decided, even after they get back on their feet, I wasn't going to go back. I was just going to go totally independent.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, I kept working.
Okay, so where did you go from CTV?
Well, I went to, the first time I left CTV, I was at Cable and Wireless. I was their public relations officer, the first one Cable and Wireless ever had at the time. And then I eventually, then I went back to CTV. Hurricane pushed us out, and I was at the Antigua Sun, working in newspaper. I was a journalist there. And then right after the Antigua, HAMA got really busy, because at that time we had HAMA Productions was in full swing. We were recording the community calendar sponsored by Bank of Antigua. We had a children's program. We had a number of things going on, and so it got really busy for us. And Howard just basically said to me, okay, it's time to pull the plug on everything else, because we were literally burning it at both ends, trying to get a lot done, because I was still very involved. While I had a full-time job, we were also producing a television series called Island Magazine.
Yeah.
Which,
well, that's the first thing we started doing after we left CTV the first time in 92. And so we did 26 episodes, I think,
Island
Magazine.
And that took us around.
And that was, again, another news magazine.
Yeah, well, Island art and culture, Caribbean, featuring
and that
Caribbean art and culture.
That took us around the region.
Yeah.
Trinidad, Barbados, Montserrat.
Yeah, sponsored by Liat. Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, okay.
Yeah, so we know and it's showed on ABS.
Okay, who has the archives for all of these things? Insight, the kids, the kids news.
Well, I don't know if CTV has still have their episodes, but we have
a few. We have a few of everything. We have a bit of everything.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Hurricane Lewis, the moisture started to get to some of the
humidity damaged a lot of the tapes we had. We had everything. Stacks and stacks of tapes. But after Hurricane Lewis, the humidity caused a lot of the tapes to develop fungus.
Yeah. We do have samples of them. Yeah. And we're trying to digitize a lot of stuff now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. All right. Cool. So after a while, it became this independent production.
Yeah.
Company. How early did you name it HAMA? From day one?
92. From 92.
From the beginning.
Yeah.
And what does HAMA means?
Howard and Mitzi Allen.
I want people, I know, but I just wanted the audience HAMA. Like it resonates directly with the family.
Yeah.
All right. So clearly HAMA was it HAMA Productions, HAMA Films, HAMA TV?
HAMA Productions. It was HAMA Productions. It started as HAMA Productions.
Yeah. Because we were doing everything. Mm-hmm. At the time, we were doing anything that had to do with production. And then HAMA TV was when we started to do television shows. And then HAMA Films when we went into movies. But HAMA Productions meant, for us at the time, it meant that we would not only do our own productions, but we will do yours as well. We would have clients, from commercials to weddings to music videos, all of that. And then HAMA TV became us producing independent television programs. And then, of course, HAMA Films was Howard's baby. That's his dream, to make movies, which he always wanted to do, So that was but first it started off as just HAMA, us doing our work. Yeah.
So for you, it was an artistic type of an enterprise.
Endeavor. Yeah. Yes, it was.
How was the business end? How was it doing business in? How many types of companies like yours were there in operations at that time?
Back then, it was probably, I could think of Intercom and video makers and I would say maybe another three. That were totally independent.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree with him on that, because you said like hours. There was nothing. No. Nobody was doing.
Yeah. Let me rephrase the question. Just rest on Howard.
Yeah.
At that time, there were a number of entities that were into the
video production. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Not necessarily of the HAMA.
Not producing the kind of content we were.
No.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So they made.
How
was it doing business? Notice the business end. How
right.
was it getting paid, being able to cover expenses, being able to live. Because I know you guys are creative, but one of the important things always to me has always been is how are we generating a living from this?
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Personally, I think in the earlier days, it was actually, to me, a little easier than it is now.
Yeah. 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 So Explain? Well, there wasn't a lot of people doing, well, because there wasn't a lot of people doing what we were doing at the time, right? So that made it easier. I remember we actually had, the first thing we had was a television series called Island Magazine. We did 26 episodes and we sold commercials in those episodes. And if you want to do some quick math, we were at the time selling a 30-second ad, right? For I think
30-second spot.
30-second spot
was $300.
Was $300. Think about that.
That's back in 1992.
Right. So right, yeah. And at the time too, we had, at least while Howard was working independently, I had a full-time job. So we were able to make a living and save to do other things, to do the independent productions. I think the true test was when Hurricane Lewis blew us out of our full-time jobs and we became truly independent with the production. I think we had to, we struggle a lot and still struggle to this day because as our projects get bigger, we need more and more money to do the things that we want to do. But I think from the business end of it, we've always been able to try to do things at a low cost, so that, and we reinvest in ourselves too. We don't pay ourselves big salaries, so that Howard is always upgrading our equipment, making sure we have what we need to, So for us,
I've always tried to achieve a high quality at a low cost.
Right.
Right. So I don't try to get the most expensive equipment.
Yeah.
I just try to figure out how to get the most out of it. Basic equipment.
Going back to what I said about him when I met him, when I watched what he was doing with limited resources.
Look, sometimes people spend a lot of money in equipment because they don't truly understand the equipment. And so they think, I guess if I buy a $50,000 camera, it will shoot better.
Right, but then how much are you gonna? Then how much are you?
There's a lot of problems with that. One, in a small market, how do you make the money back? Right, and two, is it possible that you could get that same quality with a $10,000 camera? Right, so you might need to do some research and make sure that you're not just paying an extra $40,000 for buttons and switches.
Like, I remember one of the things I learned from Howard when everybody was talking about they're going to get an HD camera and an HD camera. And Howard looked at me and said, sweetheart, we're not broadcasting in HD. So the output, it doesn't matter. Your output is not going to be HD. I mean, the common sense logic of knowing where you are, what you need to do, what you need to do. So from a business point of view, what I learned quickly from him is to become more resourceful so that the money goes further for the business, goes further for us as individuals. We travel for work, but we turn around and we make the work travel also vacation, so we don't, so we get to see the world, we're working, we take some time to explore. So it's never that we never feel as though, oh my God, we're at the grind and we're not able to do anything because we're struggling as entrepreneurs and all of that. We build into what we do, time for ourselves, time to accomplish where we want to, wherever we say we're going to be at the end of a particular year is where we usually are. I guess this is one time, I'll tell you, in 2020 where we sort of said, we had a plan for September, but the world is saying no, But yeah, so from a business point of view, I think it's just us as business people being resourceful and being able to manage the limited resources that we have to accomplish the things we want to accomplish.
I hear you on that, but I'm going to take Howard up on something that he said as when we started this particular line of conversation. Howard said that it was a lot better, then than
Right.
Yeah.
And two things I wanted to just pick up from there that I'd like you guys to comment. One, I get the feeling that in terms of the corporate support for projects, investment, I wanted to see if you could touch on that for me, one. And two, is it that the competition now is a lot more, not only locally, but externally, as in more companies locally are bringing in what they need from outside?
Well, I think one is competition, meaning there are far more people doing the same, doing similar stuff. And I also think that because of the cost of the equipment itself, even the companies themselves can actually buy some of the same equipment and produce some of the stuff in-house, right? Especially now with social media, there's a lot you can do in-house. And so if you're depending on commissioned work and clients to support you,
that's a rough road.
That's a rough road.
Yes.
We have tried our best to be independent producers as much as possible, where we're not really doing commissioned work. We're really producing work ourselves
to sell
and then sell that product, right? Which is why we love filmmaking. Right?
We're not going to do filmmaking yet.
Yeah.
I want to talk like your. So when you say independent work now, is it mainly the films you do, or do you do other?
No, we do television. For instance, like Island Magazine, the first series you did, Island Magazine, that was a totally independent program, meaning we came up with a concept, we financed it, and then we were able to put it on the air
and make money
from it. Right? And that has always been what we wanted the core of our business to be. Right?
How has that gone since? How has that been?
Well, it has always been the independent projects that we've worked and have, for the most part, always been successful.
Yeah.
They've always been able to pay for themselves. We haven't done, I don't think, as much of it as we would love to do.
Paradise View.
Right. We did Paradise View, which is another, right. But of course, a lot of those are self-financed productions. And so sometimes it's a little bit of a heavy lift to start, to get the production started. But once we're able to complete it, they usually pay for themselves.
Yeah.
What we've noticed is that it takes between maybe 2, maybe 3 years before we've made all the money back from investing in that production.
What about the long-term life of those kind of productions? So, for example,
well, they're forever. They're really forever.
I'll tell.
Sale, in terms of the sale. So, for example, like now we're under lockdown,
right?
Potentially, could a ABS TV, a CTV, a regional entity?
Well, I will tell you. Yeah. Well, we've been approached. We have been approached by a number of regional entities, and we have contracts with regional entities for old content as well as future content yet to be produced. I don't know if you realize what has recently happened in Trinidad with Filmco, where 80% of their content has to be local or Caribbean. So they have reached out to independent producers. Yes, Filmco, and they pay you for your content. Similarly, there are special interest cable channels and TV channels in North America that want Caribbean content and local content. And of course, the independent owners of platforms now that want to show the work of a particular demographic. So you have, like, for instance, all our films, except for Jabless, are on Studio and Nancy, which is like the Netflix for Caribbean cinema. You know, you can go there and still watch The Sweetest Mango, the skin, no seed, they're all up there. You pay to live stream or you pay to own it, you download it. So they find a life outside. We've asked, I mean, there was one TV station in Toronto that wanted Paradise View, but based on whatever contractual arrangements we have when we first establish the production, that determines how far it will go, right? So the possibility, yes, the possibility is there for when we now, as independent producers, produce content, we can actually decide who is going to, before we even do it, we know where it's going, who wants it, what's going to be where it's going to end. And the movies, I mean, everybody wants it for whatever reason. The universities, the smaller stations that are looking for different contents. Even we haven't explored it, but we have been told to by so many people that there are a number of stations within South Africa and on the African continent that would be interested even in our old stuff. So I think in that sense, the distribution for independent work has opened up. Where we are now, if we want to do more of what we want to do, we are very much into training people. We're not getting any younger, training people to be a part of this whole engine.
Before we move on to the training, I want to wrap up this little point here.
Yeah.
So if I noticed you went regional and then you went international.
Right.
So how do we? So in Antigua, we would have to wait, or we would have to access your material from a regional or international affiliate, like the Film Co.
Studio Nancy.
Studio Nancy.
Locally, Studio Nancy.
So could ABS decide that they want to purchase your series to show for people?
Well, they have. I think everything so far to date, once we have monetized it enough to our benefit, we share it. We share it.
ABS,
I mean, it would be wonderful. We think it's important to just tape.
So why we can't pay locally?
That's a question. I think that's a question for ABS, really, because I don't think the country is I don't think the station, because we know other independent producers have approached ABS about buying their content, and the problem, I think, is that they don't have a budget to acquire, and a lot of the independent producers outside of Antigua, they are not just going to hand over their work and say, here, show this. But we've been able to have great relationship with ABS in that when we showed Island Magazine, it showed with ads that we put in it that people paid for. And in the case, and that has happened in the region with our films as well. And once we're done with I shouldn't say we're done because you're never really done, but we allow the national station to show our work because we think it's important for our young people to see ourselves and to see what's possible. We got enough coming in from North America.
So one last tack at that, and then I'm going to move on.
Yeah, okay.
So if ABS doesn't have the budget,
right,
to support, my choice of words, to support the development of this particular sector by purchasing the rights to show, maybe is there scope then perhaps that we need to go through the Ministry of Culture, who then purchases the rights and then maybe allows the viewings through the nation station? Yes,
absolutely. That's a possibility,
Yeah.
But that's a possibility. But there has to be the will to want to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the
things. I went to the Will House.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
There has to be the will.
Yeah, but one of the ideas we've been pushing is for the proper establishment of a film commission.
Yes.
So that when international production crews come here and producers come here to do their work, that they pay something
that goes into a kitty.
That goes towards
The development.
Supporting the development of a local film and television industry.
Yes.
So if I were to jump ahead, because I had that there, but I'm going to jump ahead to tie up to that point there.
Mm-hmm.
When we had Peter Pan the other day and that segment that was
right.
filmed, we're grateful and excited for the exposure that we got. But based on what you just said, or your recommendation, that perhaps there should have been scope for a portion of whatever was spent to be put into a fund.
A fund.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now
and it's not a new idea.
It's not a new idea. We're not coming up with this.
Yeah,
this is it's the way it works.
Yeah, and that brilliant. It's a whole idea.
What do you think is a challenge for us to implement this?
Well, one of the arguments I've heard against that is there seems to be some fear that if you charge people to come here and work, that they won't come.
But they charge people everywhere else?
Everywhere else. In fact, when we went to Ithaca College in New York to do a master class on filmmaking, the students there had to pay to shoot on campus.
Because they're preparing them for the real world.
Because they were obviously teaching them about paying.
The students had to do what?
They had to pay. They had to get a permit
to shoot
on
their
campus.
Student films. To shoot their student films on campus.
So they can't just set up a camera, anywhere and just they had to actually go apply for a permit. And they're told, okay, you have to pay this much.
Well, and if you go to, we don't even have to go that far, right? You have to pay to shoot in the major cities around the world. But even in Dominica.
And even in Dominica, because of Pirates of the Caribbean.
There's a sign at the airport that says.
They got a film commission.
Yeah.
Because when the people from Disney went there, they asked, where is your film commission? We want to speak to you.
Oh, so they got it by default.
Yes.
And now they have a sign that at the airport that says, if you are seen shooting with a professional camera without a permit, you will be charged $5,000.
So what's our excuse?
Right. You asking us questions.
I don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Guys are the experts. Who else am I supposed to
No, we're not the experts. Yeah. But because we're in it, we understand what the rules are. Because I know that if we want to go and shoot a scene on the streets of Toronto, there is a protocol that we have to follow. And I know that
even if you cheat, even if you went out and shot something, right, and you put it in your film. When the film commission sees the film and they see, they will ask you, did you get a permit? And if you don't, the distributors won't take your film.
Distributors won't take your film. And if actors are in unions, they get fined for being in so it's a whole
very connected.
It is an industry. That's what you call an industry, right?
If we're doing a video, using a professional crew, does that count as well?
Oh yes. Anything.
Yes.
Because it's professional.
It's
because what they look at, like if you went down on the street and set up a camera, right? If it's a professional camera, they'll come and ask you, did you get a permit? If you're using your little rinky-dink thing, your phone,
nobody will bother you.
If you pull out, a proper professional camera, someone will come and ask you, did you get a permit? What are you doing? And you have to pay.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's just standard.
So now let's I want to come back and talk standards, but by the way, both of you, I should let you know, especially Mitzi. Mitzi, do you know what time it is?
It's 5:25.
And you were worried that we wouldn't have enough to talk about. And we haven't touched the films yet. Notice? Are you bored?
I'm not. Ask your listeners.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to We're the Ones Wednesday on a Thursday. Special guests, Howard and Mitzi Allen. For those of you who have just joined us, we are discussing
everything.
The lives of Howard and Mitzi. And we are looking at, well, we started with when they were being formed way back when, and we have you missed their world with romance, it was quite interesting. And we're now we have touched on various facets of their lives, but now we're gonna go touch on what I think perhaps is their most significant component, especially in terms of us in Antigua and Barbuda, where they've placed us. Their film development. Did I say the right? Did I put it right?
Film development, yes. Yes.
All right. Okay. So, what made Howard? Wait. Who decided on the films? Howard or Mitzi?
I did.
Howard, why film? I mean, you did independent TV, you did independent production. Now you've gone for a full-length film. Why?
Well, first of all, films was something I always wanted to do from a child. Right. And the first story I started working on was a story about Prince Class, the Prince Class Rebellion.
Notes to self, Prince Class Rebellion movie coming soon. Okay, carry on.
Right. I had kind of put that on the back burner because it's a complicated production to do because it's like a period piece and all of that. But it's something I always wanted to do. And I had mentioned earlier that the only thing stopping me back then was the cost of the equipment for filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The other thing was I liked the idea of having a product that you can sell directly to the consumer, because unlike the TV shows you're selling to a TV station,
right,
and to advertisers.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the idea of producing a product that I can actually put on a shelf or I can put in a theater and people actually pay and come to see it, which is why we started doing feature-length films and not short films. Because most people would start doing short films first because they're, cheaper, all of that, easier to produce. But for me, a short film has very little commercial value. Right. Okay. So it's hard for you to do a 10-minute film and tell people to come to a theater and pay money to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea of making a feature film was kind of based on being able to have an actual product that we can sell directly to the consumer.
Okay. And so you settled on The Sweetest Mango.
Well, we thought we were going with something easy, meaning it's a story we know, it's our story.
Yeah.
And
okay. That's it.
Right.
I mean it's your story.
It's our story.
The Sweetest Mango.
What did you not tell me in the world with romance?
The Sweetest Mango is based on how we met. It's our story. It's our love story.
Yeah, I met Mitzi, and
didn't it sound familiar when I said I met him at CTV and we worked together?
I went by her apartment and gave her a mango.
And he came by me with a mango. That's true. Yes.
All right.
Well,
so
what was the mango for? You were just giving her just for giving her sake? Some ties of when I love them all stories now.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. What was in that mango?
Well, we won't talk about that.
Yeah.
Something to ponder, huh? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you did The Sweetest Mango.
Yes.
Yeah.
We saw the end product. We loved the end product.
Yeah.
Tell us some of your challenges to pull off that first movie.
Well, before The Sweetest Mango, obviously we would have never done a feature film before. We would have done, TV productions. So some of the right off the bat technical stuff challenges that I would be looking at is when you're doing a TV show. For instance, it's okay for people to see microphones.
Right.
You're doing a film, you have to find a way to hide microphones. So the type of just something as simple as that is something you have to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Then, of course, what was supposed to be, maybe 6, 8 people, a cast of 6, 8 people turned into
a cast of 100.
Cast of an epic.
Yeah.
So the thing with films is every performer, every actor is money.
Mm-hmm.
There's a catering cost, there's a transportation cost, there's wardrobe, there's makeup, there's a cost attached to each person.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of what you have to do when you're writing, at least for me, when you're writing the screenplay, you have to think about how many.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to think about, do we really need this character? What is this character adding to the story so much that we're willing to spend this extra money?
Yeah.
Really?
Right.
Yeah. And then you film it and let the money.
No, not when you
Well, if you're Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, if you
can put 1,000 people in the film.
If you're not paying for it yourself, why not?
Yeah.
And that is one of for me as a producer, that is one of the challenges, that once we decide how much money that we have and how much money that we have to spend on this thing, that we stay as close to that as possible.
Even first time, if that's one of the things they teach first time screenwriters.
Yeah.
If you write a screenplay that has a huge cast, that's one of the first reasons they use to throw it out.
Yeah.
They read it, they go, who's this person think he can have a cast of 1,000 people? And they just toss it.
Right.
Right. Because they're thinking, obviously, you don't understand the cost of a production.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So every.
Say it again. How did
what?
The cost for the first production? How did you?
Okay. So, a lot of the initial financing for the film came from us.
Mm-hmm.
We were working on a TV production at the time.
Pet Playhouse.
Right.
Remember that? Yes, that was.
Which had international funding.
Yeah.
And paid very well. And so we used some of the funds from that and helped to pay for The Sweetest Mango. And then we started to get product placements.
Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, we had just people in the community who wanted to support what we were doing and helped us. They weren't looking for a profit. They weren't trying to invest. They just liked what we were doing.
So we got to use really nice locations, and we got support even from the police department when it was time to drive on the roads and things like that. So
we had a lot of national effort.
It's Antigua's movie.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Which again is part of why we don't mind giving it to.
I mean,
there's a lot of people who worked on it and.
For nothing, just for the fun and the excitement of being involved in something that was different from what they're used to doing. And so, I truly believe that no matter what we do, it holds a special place, because I mean they're young people. It's over 20 years now, and there are people who have grown up with it. Their parents told them they were in it. People who are in it now have children. Their children are having children. I mean, so it's one of those projects that inspired a lot of people, even people who worked on it with us, to go on and to do other things because they thought that they could. And it didn't necessarily have to be in film. It's just that they pursued whatever burning creative desire they had in them. They thought, you know what, let me just get on with doing this thing because I have something that I want to create and I want to share. So, but the biggest challenge, I think, was staying within our budget, not blowing it up. We did eventually blow it up, but
and incidentally, that is not unusual.
And that's not unusual,
in the film industry. It is not unusual at all. In fact, when we talk to a lot of independent filmmakers, they're in awe of us.
They're in awe of us when we tell them, oh no, well, we spent far more than we thought we would.
Yeah. But in a lot of their cases, they have projects they've started that they never completed.
Never completed, or never made any money.
Yeah, just
never made. So we're fortunate. Mm-hmm. We're very fortunate. And we learned, and it was the first one.
So how did the first one, what lessons did you take from that first one into the second one?
Well, he can tell you his lessons and I'll tell you mine.
Oh, they were different. Okay. Yes, how?
Yeah. No, we have overall lessons. The overall lesson is when we're budgeting a film, have a title handle on cost, on the cost of the production, and really be more mindful of time. Right?
Yeah, it's really about
managing the resources, I think. That's what we took away from the Sweetest Mango. Getting a handle on all of that. Yeah. You know, but I mean,
and where you put,
where you put the
money, you know.
Yeah, I can tell you of just a funny story about where you put the money. I would tell my colleagues in Toronto who make indie films that the most of our money for the Sweetest Mango went to transportation and food, and they were like, "What?
I'm going to say what?"
Yeah, no. Oh, come on. You know, in the Caribbean, people work on their stomachs, right? You have to feed people, and you know, in the Caribbean, that if you tell somebody, "I need you on set for 6," unless you go and get them out of their house and get them to the location, you're not going to see them at 6 o'clock.
Okay,
right? So food and transportation, it's the Caribbean way, right? And so therefore, you know, the budget was upside down. We could have put a lot more into equipment. We could have put a lot more into post-production, you know, and things like that. So now we know that certain things has a percentage. When you create a budget, you know, a certain percentage of that budget goes to different things. They're actually industry percentages. Yeah, you can't pay for something in industry standards. So we learned that. It's like I'll give you a perfect example. Just the other day, a cinematographer asked me for my opinion and how much he should charge. And I said to him, well, the cinematographer on feature films get 15% of the budget. So you ask them, what is the budget of the film? And then once you know the budget, then you can adjust to suit. Is it a film that you really want to be involved in? Do you want to work on that film? Will you take a cut? Or will you take exactly that 15%? Because you understand, you know, what the variables are in it. So that we learned that. That was the lesson. We as a company learned that the percentages, you don't just pay people whatever they say they want. Well, I think they have some money, so charge me 10, you know, and you don't actually, you know, you don't.
A lot of the challenges, we experienced came after the Sweetest Mango.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people use Hollywood as their benchmark.
But we don't have any other. I mean,
you don't exactly. Right. That's true. And so you can't blame them really. But it's for us to learn what it is, it's for us to create a model that works for us.
So people want to get paid millions.
And they think they're going to be rich and famous in a couple of, you know. But so that was that was fun. The Sweetest Mango was fun. It was fun to learn, and it was fun to grow doing it. And we made lifetime friendships because of it. And since then, because it has shown places. We got a cinematographer who saw the Sweetest Mango and said to Howard, I want to come and work with you on your next project. And boom, he came and he worked on the skin and brought his film students, to come and be a crew for the skin. That was as a result of the Sweetest Mango. He just loved the way Antigua looked and thought, hey, I think I want to work with these people, you know?
Scary, okay?
What?
The skin was a seriously scary.
For very superstitious people, yes. For very superstitious people, it's a very scary movie.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that.
It was. Now, just for the record, I think most persons listening would be familiar with all of your movies.
Mm-hmm.
We can't go into details, but just for the record, could you just list the movies that you have made to date? And then we're going to discuss a little bit, not too much, a little bit of my favorite.
Okay.
Okay, so it's the Sweetest Mango,
Romantic comedy.
romantic comedy, No Seed, a political drama, Jobless, and Jobless, which is Caribbean folklore, and it's more of I don't want to call it, I guess I could call it a comedy.
Comedy, yeah.
But it's a humorous take on Caribbean folklore.
Mm-hmm.
Then The Skin, right, which is a thriller.
Yeah. Based on mythology. Yeah.
No.
Thriller. It's not a horror.
It's a thriller. In the horror world, The Skin would be rather tame.
Very tame enough.
I know. But Caribbean people, like you said, those were very suspicious, man.
Oh yeah. I mean, even Jobless for some people. I mean, when we showed Jobless, we had a screening of Jobless at the upstairs gallery at the museum, and a woman came up to Howard, right?
And she was saying,
yeah,
I don't see how you could think that is funny.
Yeah, she said, I don't know how you think that is funny.
Those things are real.
And when we showed The Skin in Dominica, a woman came up afterwards and said, I love your movie, but just one thing.
Said everything was right.
Everything was right, except Sukanyas don't walk, they float. Oh, you know, right? So for us, very serious, and outside in Toronto, everybody looked, and in the States, they all looked at the similarities with the faith-based traditions and where some of these stories, these European stories, they think they're European, while we think it's African. The people think they're European stories, that were brought to us. So, so The Skin, and then...
And of course, we're working on Deep Blue.
On Deep Blue, yes. Yeah.
And how's it doing? Has this current situation...
Mm-hmm. Film is...
But other than that, the most of the film is done.
And Howard is editing right now.
Yeah.
So we're editing, and I think the way the world is
it actually gives me time to focus on edit.
Yeah, he's able to focus on editing, and also with the whole world slowing down. We already have an invitation to a major film festival, but that festival may not happen. So we will see. If it doesn't happen, it's almost like a blessing in disguise, because we would have to be very, very ready for it. So it gives us a little time to get ready. So when they're ready, we'll be ready. In every cloud, there's always some silver lining. But we've done all the principal shooting. And what we're doing is some scenes that involve local actors and one actor who's not in the country right now. And so once we can all come back together, the movie will, for the most part, be already edited, because we have the time now, and then we just drop in whatever is missing. Yeah.
So how do I get to see La Jobless again?
Jobless, I'll send you a copy.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for both of you, by now you're seasoned filmmakers. Can I say that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you can. Yeah. Yes.
So for those out there, not me, I'm just a watcher. I have a command. I don't know if Zara is watching. I sent her a message. She's supposed to watch, but I have a question for her, for you, that I'm going to finance. I don't know when, but I'm going to finance. Yes.
Yeah.
So for those persons out there who want to consider television production, film, and so on, what do you tell them? Given that you have successfully made films, you're still not, I'm using your terms, Hollywood blockbusters yet, because it's coming. I'm preaching it there. It's coming. How do we encourage our young people to move to follow this path? And as I ask this question, I want you to keep at the back of your mind the training that you offer, go there next.
Right.
Yeah, well, for me, the thing that I'd want them to think about is they need to be storytellers. They should want to actually tell stories, right? Too often when I speak to people in the Caribbean who have an interest in filmmaking, they seem to be more interested in the technical and the camera and not so much about storytelling.
Having something to say.
Yeah.
Have something to say.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also, kind of from a business perspective, understand the terrain. So understand the climate that you're working in, the environment you're working in, and understand economies of scale.
Yes.
Right? And there's a market. The thing is, there's a market here, right? That will actually never truly be satisfied by North American content, right? And so, if we learn enough about our local audience, we can provide them with content that they cannot get from North America.
And Africa has figured that out.
Yeah, like I met this guy. He's like 80 years old, and he was telling me he just loved the Nigerian films, and so he doesn't watch American TV anymore. He just has stacks and stacks of Nigerian films, and he was saying he loved the film.
My sister that does that annoys the crap out of me. Such a life. Absolutely, sister.
Yeah, and he was saying he loved the films because they remind him so much of when he was growing up in Antigua back in the day and all of that, right? And so if you consider someone like him, right, there are lots of other people like him who are not totally satisfied with the content they get from North America. It doesn't always speak directly to them.
My palate.
Right.
And there are a lot of stories about us that are misrepresented by Hollywood, right? And that's something we can change. We can tell our stories ourselves, tell them better, and tell them from our own perspective. And that's the kind of stuff that I think we need to focus on, like so that our stories have a unique feel about them. Right, and come from a real place.
I would also like to add to that too. Why do they want to do this? Because a lot of times, people who are fascinated by what we do are fascinated by the end product, and what we do isn't very glamorous. It's a lot of hard work. It's long nights. It's not big money, at least not when you start. And I think we have been spoiled by images coming from the North about this industry, right? And so they have to be very, to be very certain about what, because, since we have been in this, we have met actors from all over the world. And in Deep Blue, we have actors who are very accomplished. One of them was in a film that was Renee Zellweger was nominated for an Oscar. And for them, it's all about the craft, and it's all about working and pushing themselves and challenging themselves. I'm talking about the people in front of the camera. And then for the people behind the camera, just like Howard said, it's all about imagery and art and storytelling. So for people who are fascinated, I just want to make sure that they really want to do this for the right reasons and not for what they perceive it to be. And because of that, we now train people in all aspects of film and television production, because as we continue to up our game, we demand the same of the people who are working with us. And we're working with more professional actors and more professional individuals in front of and behind the camera. So we're now looking for people who are serious about this. They can get a foothold and learn their craft here and then go further. but they have to be serious.
Yeah, and I think with every film, there's always the potential for it to generate big money.
Right.
Right.
You just never know.
Yeah, you never know how it would click with an audience. Right. But if that's the only reason you're doing it, chances are you're going to get really frustrated.
Very quickly.
Because there are people who are making much bigger films with far bigger budgets that go nowhere.
Yeah.
Right. In Hollywood, they expect out of every 10 films, 7 of them will fail.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Out of every 10 films they make, they expect 7 of them to fail, meaning financially.
All right. So let's.
But they expect the 3 that do well to do so well
that you don't even know about the 7 that didn't make it.
You understand?
But what about the people that made those 7 films?
Well, everybody that worked on it would have gotten paid. It's just that the investors would have not gotten their money. Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes it's not that, and sometimes it's not that the film did not make any money at all. It's just that it may wind up making the money.
Right.
Right. And it winds up making the money over
a longer period of time. Yeah.
But, for the people who invest in films, they're usually looking for their money quickly.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's the
Right.
question.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, you would have been with us for a while. You know that we're speaking to Howard and Mitzi Allen on We're the Ones Wednesday on a Thursday. Second.
Yes, it's more like twins.
Yeah, it's Wednesday. Yeah.
Wednesday. All right. Yes. And let me first thank Howard and Mitzi. This has been a while in coming, but I kept trying to find the right time, and then I know you guys were busy. When I really wanted to do it, I know you were busy with the
Yeah.
So you say disruptions bring possibilities.
Yeah.
Let me get you guys on screen.
Yeah. Or they say every spoil is a style.
Yes. So here is my, and by the way, and Howard, this is for Mitzi again. Mitzi, it's fine.
Oh yes.
Think of so many things.
Ask your audience: Are they entertained? Are they glued? Because I don't think we're that fascinating.
I'm getting lots of questions and feedback via
really? Are they positive though? Are they positive?
There are 1 or 2 questions there. Heather is there saying hello. I put that in. But I'm politician. Yes. So here is my question for you.
Okay.
Antigua industry, the Antigua film industry.
We don't have an industry. I'm sorry. When I have a pet peeve, I'll tell you right now, and then you can add, we don't have an industry. An industry means you have all that it takes to do the project, right? We are trying to develop one. We are very much in the developmental stages. You know, we want professionals at every end, in front of, behind of, distribution, everything, just everything, and then we can call it an industry. We are trying to develop that so that everybody who has a skill to offer, every artist can participate in film. Sorry, ask your question.
So, as I adjust my question,
okay,
where are we
along
the path of developing?
Okay.
Is that a more appropriate question?
Yes, I prefer that. Because it is truly very developmental, and if we don't look at it that way,
I mean, we're still at the very early stages. We still don't have, a whole cadre of trained actors and trained cinematographers and just all the different elements that you need to drive an industry.
So could I then add something else to the question, perhaps?
Sure.
My thoughts.
Yeah.
So with the development of the theater arts program in the secondary schools, right, is that perhaps giving us the right foundation? And when I say the theater arts, I don't just mean those who are the actors. I'm talking about
yes,
of course.
Yeah, I'm so glad that is happening. Yes, because it brings. Let me tell you what theater. And what I love about theater people, it brings discipline. Oh my goodness, people who do theater, they come to you with a certain amount of discipline. I will take anybody who's doing theater than anybody who's walking off the street, because they know time, they know they have to know their lines, they know they have to always be prepared, they know how to take direction. It instills in you so much that it makes a big, big difference. Also, our educational system, if we fail our young people and they don't know how to read, they don't know how to read a script, right? I've had don't laugh, this is a serious thing. I've had people who come to me and say, I want to be an actress. And you give them a script and they can't read it and they can't interpret. So this is why I say we are at a very developmental stages of film in Antigua and Barbuda. So we need theater programs, we need things in the school that inspire young people to want to be involved in this kind of thing. And when we don't, I will know when we don't have an industry, when I don't have to do auditions abroad and for all that we need, when we're trying to up our game, when Howard needs to just direct. Because with The Sweetest Mango, a lot of people don't realize it. Howard was the director, the cameraman, the lighting technician, the editor. It was a one-man movie. And he had Algie, who was his assistant, who would grab things. And that's when I got into the fray, having to help direct, because sometimes he's so busy setting up and so on. So we have to get to the point where we're not in this by ourselves, you know? And so that is what we're looking at. We're at the stage right now in our lives where we see the need for us to start to develop every aspect of it so that we can push forward and push our work out, you know, to the region and beyond.
Okay, excellent.
So that's where we are.
Okay, and then for the hard part, this is hard,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be even more difficult now given where we're heading, our current status.
Right, yeah.
Because it's always being said, and I don't know if you'll agree or if this can be private sector driven, that there needs to be the right types of policy formulation and support to foster the creative arts industries in general.
That's right.
And then, of course, the film industry in particular.
Right.
Do you think that, change the question, do you think that this could be one of the areas that could help to bring us out? Because we're going to emerge from this particular situation in a very different place. Mm-hmm. I think there's a general consensus that would be it. And we're going to have to learn to spread that basket, our economic basket, a little thinner. Yes, tourism will still be a significant underpinner, but we're going to have to spread that basket. What scope, if both of you were Minister of Culture, okay, so there are two of you.
Okay.
I have 5 minutes. One is Minister of Culture and the Arts, and the other is Prime Minister. I don't know who's who. Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, and Minister of Culture and the Arts.
Right. Which one do you want?
Okay, so you have to give us time to have a quick election.
Okay, we'll election. Okay, so who are you? Are you the Prime Minister or are you Minister of Culture? He's more
I'm the Prime Minister.
See, I knew he was going to be the Prime Minister. Okay,
so Mr. Prime Minister, would you want the Minister of Culture and the Arts to go first and you can tell me I have no money or what? Tell her you have no money? Mr. Prime Minister,
yeah.
You come to this job and we're talking culture and the arts now, huh? And you come to this job with this experience of being in the industry. What would be your vision? I'm making it easy for you. What would be your vision of where you'd want to take us? And don't go for building an economic powerhouse.
In terms of film, you mean?
Yes.
Well, I'd want to develop a proper film industry. And I'd want to do that by first setting up a film commission.
Fair enough.
So have a film commission properly established, and so that the money that's generated from the film commission can now go into supporting film producers, right? And the way films are produced, just about everybody, right? All the other industries are actually benefit. So if you're a carpenter, if you're a painter, if you're into construction, if you're into the visual arts,
If you're a
if you're a musician, if you're a singer, if you're a seamstress,
if you're a caterer,
just about every industry you can think of is impacted, right, or can be supported through the film industry.
Mm-hmm.
And Madam Minister of Culture and the Arts.
Okay. So once a film commission has been set up, then I would like to have a cultural development fund. And the cultural development fund would be giving seed money, not all the money, seed money to deserving artists who come with a proposal that we think was worthy of national attention. And attached to that money would be someone from my ministry that will be overseeing the work that they're doing to make sure that the money is spent correctly and that we do have an end product. And part of it, this would be no different than when you give scholarships, where some component of what they're doing is preserving Antigua's art and culture. So it's not seed money to do whatever, and this may sound kind of socialist, but it would be seed money for the development of our art and culture, and that's what the National Development Fund would be, which is something that the Prime Minister would have established through the creation of a commission, and I can get an allotted budget every year and distribute among the different industries. So it for me, as the culture minister, it wouldn't just be about film.
Yeah.
It would be for theater, for artists, for visual arts. If a writer says to me, I want to go to that workshop that's happening in New Orleans with some famous author, because I think it's going to help me to develop my writing skills, I make sure that they're able to go and do that. The same for painting. Anything that furthers their development, whether it's workshops or attachments and things like that. That's what I would be doing with the money that the minister allocates to me to help and everything is for preserving the arts. Yeah.
I'm going to clip this piece and forward it to the relevant department. But as a technician, though, I'd like to just add two caveats. Number one, remember, we don't want to pay ECHO. So if we don't want to pay ECHO, I don't know how we're going to pay any money for anything else. Did you hear that?
Yes, but why don't you see who doesn't want to do it?
Yeah, but who doesn't want to pay ECHO?
Honorable ministers, we're not.
Yes.
This is a technician giving the perspective, right? Just to wrap this.
Yes. But education would make them understand the value of paying.
I'm trying to understand who doesn't
want to pay. I think there has been a disservice to the artists.
What I'm trying to get clear is we have artists who have been complaining for years
that they're not making any money.
Don't make any money.
Right.
Right. Especially singers and musicians. Right. And so I would think that ECHO would be the thing that they always needed.
So my curious question then would be, we hear those who are supposed to pay voices, but I haven't heard the artists' voices defending their right to be paid. I'm just putting that there.
Right, but that's the point I'm making. The point I'm making is the artists themselves. I'm not quite sure if they understand.
I don't think they understand what's in it for them.
And that's really how artists. That's really how artists make their money.
Okay, that's one. And two, the second thing I'd like to say is that while the NDF is great and that we're putting resources in, one of the things that I would recommend, Madam Minister of Culture and the Arts and Mr. Prime Minister, is that we consider perhaps putting a little caveat in that just in case the film or whatever goes big, that a percentage of the proceeds would be reinvested back into the.
Yeah, and that is done.
Actually, I have a really good story I could tell you. I have a really good story. I have a really good story I could tell you about that. I was at a conference in Barbados, and the film commissioner for Ireland was there, and you know the group U2.
Yes.
And Bono.
Yes.
Right. So in the early days of when Ireland was trying to build their creative industries, they basically made it so that artists wouldn't have to pay taxes on the money they make. Okay? And then U2, of course, went on to become this huge $1 billion group, right? And so Ireland, the Irish government said, well, you know, the creative industries are now properly developed, and now we can start charging you guys taxes.
Right.
and U2 took their money from Ireland and went and banked it in another country.
Right.
Yeah, but I do agree. That if there's a certain amount of support given to an artist, when that artist reaches a point that they can contribute, they should, and it should be within there that a certain percentage of what they make goes back. Because really and truly, the government is the first investor.
Yeah,
the government is the first investor.
I think that one of my personal view is, rather than leave it until when the artist gets big to go negotiate with the artist,
right?
Write it in there.
Do it now.
Yeah. You never utilize it, but you write it. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, we're done.
I have to close. I hope that my audience were
awake. Are they awake?
as I felt. I'm pleased, like I said, one of the reasons why I do this program, We're the One, it's about us, it's for us, and it's by us.
I like it, yeah.
We tend to take a lot of our time and view persons all over the world. We watch what's happening in the US, what's happening in Europe, we watch what's happening even in other Caribbean islands. And we don't watch what's happening with us. We don't know. And a lot of the reason why we don't know is because nobody takes the time to share it.
Right, yes.
So I like this. I do this program because I feel that we capture you today, we share your stories, and your story has been shared on various platforms. I mean, if persons go online, they would see interviews that you guys would have done in various formats. But I just wanted to, get a little Antiguan flavor in and make it, by us, for us. So I'm hoping that you would be satisfied if you ever get to just have a peek at the end products, that I would have done you justice, and that I would have allowed you the opportunity to cover maybe one or two unusual topics that we would have touched on.
Yes.
I'm grateful, and on behalf of the people of Antigua and Barbuda and the wider Caribbean, I must say thank you, because I know that this is not an easy road that you guys have embarked on so many years ago, and to have to self-finance a lot of the work that you have done with the plan that you would get your reward coming back to you down the road in terms of the financial dividends. And the fact that, yes, you would have traveled the world and so on, that is one thing, but to be able to reap the financial dividends, the training that you have imparted to so many persons across the islands, and even internationally, the motivator that you've been for many of us to do, for us, I say us, because I still have a vision of where I'd like to see this show go in terms of quality of content.
Right.
But motivate us at least to start. Never let that you can't get everything stop you from
stop you.
Right.
That is a very important point.
Yeah.
Right. So I just wanted to those are the main lessons for me in terms of watching you guys grow and develop. And it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure watching you. Howard, don't forget your promise to send me the movie. It's been a pleasure watching you. And I will continue to be a great supporter of the work of HAMA everything.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciated the questions.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, it was really nice. I mean, I did enjoy this, but I often wonder who else does, because I love sharing, but yeah, okay. Well, I hope we weren't a snooze, but, and that it's information that can be used and shared. I liked this too, because, I like to inspire and motivate people. And I know one of the things that I didn't tell you about the Sweetest Mango, out of that production, 10 young people went away to study film and yes, and photography and so on, and have gone on to do stuff in their own right. And I follow their careers, and that, oh my God, that makes me feel amazing. So I enjoy sharing, but I think people have one idea in their heads of who we are, and we're really not that exciting. I'm sorry.
On that note, let me thank you again. Let me thank my audience, both in Radioland and via social media, via the WhatsApp and via the link, the website link for tuning in. And this is We're the Ones Wednesday, Tapia Yard edition, held on Thursday. Sure. And we're properly socially distanced.
Yes, we are.
I and 9. And let me thank my technicians, Jupiter, who facilitated the Zoom, and of course, Joelle, who is actually in studio, making sure that everything goes well.
So okay, thank you.
Us, and this is We're the Ones, Point FM, Petra Williams, signing out for another show. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.